I've always been big on making extra money on the side, outside of my full-time job. I've done all sorts of services like Uber, Postmates, and DoorDash. I also heard good things about Instacart, so I decided to give it a shot. One of my first Instacart orders was a grocery haul from Freshmart. I accepted the order because I also shopped at Freshmart for my personal groceries. So I knew the store pretty well, and it wouldn't take me long to find the items. I shopped for the items, checked out, and then headed to the customer's residence for delivery. When I arrived at the house, an older lady answered the door. She asked if I could help her bring the groceries inside, and since she had a lot, I obliged. She was very kind and thanked me for my help. She then offered me a cup of tea. I didn't really want to, but the lady was insistent, saying it was her way of paying me back. Reluctantly, I decided to stay for a little bit. The old lady told me to wait on the couch in the living room while she went to make the tea. I sat there for a few seconds, looking around and taking in the living room. Suddenly, I really had to pee and noticed a bathroom at the end of the hallway. I figured I could quickly go while she was making the tea. As I was about to enter the bathroom, I happened to glance into a room I was passing by and had to stop for a better look because it was so odd. There wasn't much in the room, but the walls were covered with drawings made from charcoal. I couldn't tell if they were some kind of satanic symbols or something else entirely, but it was very weird. There were tons of candles in the room, and strangest of all, hanging from one wall, were multiple handcuffs and a whip. I had no idea what was going on in that room, especially since the old lady I met seemed very frail and gentle. Whether it was some sort of weird hobby or something deeper going on, I was spooked and uncomfortable. I didn't even end up going into the bathroom. I just wanted to leave the house. Heading back towards the living room, I saw that the lady was still in the kitchen. I quietly opened the front door and left without saying anything. As I drove away, I took one last look toward the house and saw the old lady standing in the front picture window, staring at me with a terrifying, dead-cold stare. I didn't call the cops to explain my visit to the old lady's house because I didn't know what I could tell them other than seeing an odd room. From that day forward, I didn't particularly feel like entering anybody else's house to help out with their groceries. When I was in college, I took up a part-time job delivering pizzas during the summer months. After graduation, I became a school teacher, but the pay wasn't great in the first few years. So, to make ends meet, I worked nights at a local pizza place called Tony's Pizza, especially during the summer when school was out. Most of my shifts ran late into the night and early morning hours. One night, I had a delivery that turned out to be quite the harrowing experience. It started out normally enough. I picked up the pizza from the restaurant, placed it in my car, and headed to the address listed. When I turned onto the street, I noticed there were no streetlights. There were 4 or 5 houses on one side and dense woods on the other, about 10 feet from the road. I parked in front of the last house on the block and walked up to the front door with the pizza. There was no doorbell, so I knocked loudly a couple of times. After waiting a minute or two with no response, I knocked again, louder this time. Finally, a dim light came on inside, and an older man opened the door. He looked groggy and grumpy, and he told me he hadn't ordered a pizza. I apologized, realizing I must have woken him up, and checked the address on my phone. The address was correct, but there was no phone number listed with the order. It seemed like a case of someone entering the wrong address. Since we hadn't received any payment, I couldn't just leave the pizza, so I headed back to my car. I put the pizza in the front seat and closed the door. As I was walking around to the driver's side, I suddenly felt cold metal pressed against the back of my head. I was being robbed. A man with a deep voice demanded all the cash I had. I complied instantly, handing him the cash pouch from the front seat. Fortunately, we emptied it frequently, so there was only about $100 in it. The whole time, I wasn't allowed to turn around and face him. I held the money behind me and he snatched it forcefully. Then, he pushed me hard against the car and instructed me not to follow him. I turned around, just in time to see a shadowy figure disappear into the woods. My heart was racing as I drove back to the store. I had never had a gun pointed at me before, and the experience was terrifying. It struck me as odd that someone would go through such an elaborate setup, targeting a house near the woods, just to rob a pizza delivery driver for a relatively small amount of money. For the rest of my time delivering pizzas, I never had another experience like that. But from that night on, I always carried mace with me and kept a sharper eye on my surroundings. It was a lesson in being cautious, especially in unfamiliar or isolated places.